All right, everyone. So welcome to this video. So in today's video, the idea of this video is to ensure that we look closely at Zoho books and also look at Zoho inventory, right? So we're going to look at both of the systems side by side. And also one thing I want us to also understand is that Zoho books is like the accounting module of the Zoho platform, and Zoho inventory is more of like a robust inventory system that can handle complex inventory management processes. So both of them can work together as one when you implement it properly or when you do that implementation. So right now, we've done an implementation already for this particular brand whereby you notice that the Zoho books and the Zoho inventory work together as one. So the idea of this is to ensure that for organizations whereby they use Zoho books for their accounting module and they have store managers and storekeepers. Storekeepers won't work on Zoho books, rather they would work on Zoho inventory, right? So just hold on. So the idea of that is to ensure that what the storekeeper sees is not the same thing as what the account people would see. So it gives a standard process. The books account people handles the counting stock, while the inventory handle the physical stock. All right, so let's go into the video. So now this is the Zoho inventory, but let's go back to Zoho books. So this is Zoho books. Now from Zoho books, right? Ideally, when you look at this interface, right, this is your dashboard, right? The dashboard. So the idea of a dashboard is that it helps you at one glance to see everything that is happening in your business. And these are the core areas that you need to focus on in any business. The first is your total receivables. Receivables are your incoming payments that is to come into your business, right? And one of the ways this is calculated is from your invoices. Once you create an invoice, an overdue invoice will be converted to a receivable. Or you bring in a client and put an opening balance, right? It also can be converted as a total receivable. So that's how the system picks up total receivables records. We have payables. These are calculated from your bills, right? You get to get your total payables. Then we move on to our cash flow. This is the section whereby you see the in and out of all transactions that happens in your business, your cash flow. The next, you see your income and expenses, right? Then you see your top expenses. Top expenses, you see those expenses that are the top ones, like as you can see, transportation expense and cost of goods sold. Then you go here, we can look at your project, and all the banks you've connected will be listed here, and the total amount of those, there's the total amount either that has been received to that account when you're recording your payment will also reflect here. Okay, and the last we have your account watch list. So in a nutshell, this is what the dashboard is all about. It helps you to understand the in and out activities that has happened in your business. So one thing I want us to look at, right, is that we are going to, this is not like a basic, straightforward books event, like a books video. Rather, we are looking closely at Zoho books and inventory when they have been integrated to work as one, right? So now let us move to item. The item module is where you can list your items. So items, if you're a service-based company, you don't work with items. Rather, your items are your services. All right. So for a company that you sell items, you sell physical products, right? Stock, product, inventory. Then you work with goods. So this is the item module. You get to list your items. Now, if we go, this is where you can quickly add a new item, right? Or you can import items in bulk, right? So this is the option for you to import your items. But let us add one item here just as a basic item. So now let us say this item is, let us say pack. All right. So at this point, we are working as an inventory. So a good. So we select the goods, the unit of these items. We say we go with kg. Now let me also make this stated. Let me just state this now. If you look at this section here, you notice these are all the units that are already mentioned here. But for some people, right, you might say, oh, the one I want to use, it's not listed here, right? Okay, let's say we want to use something like liter, although we are not going to use that now. If you notice, there is nothing like liters here. So you can add that yourself. All you just need to do, you just type in the liters here. So this is how Zoho has actually upgraded, right? You can just write what your unit here. Once you put that and save it over time, that liters, that item you added here, this liters will become part of this. So I just thought to mention that, right? So you see we now have liters. But right now, let us go back to our normal one. So this is in kg. So we can just change this back to kg. Okay. So if you have your SKU, you can add it here, your unit of your items as well, the pictures, you can add that here. So for a typical buying and selling, you sell inventory items, right? So now let's say the selling price, we are selling this for like 500,000, right? So automatically it's mapped under our sales. That's the ledger, the chart here, sales, right? So the next thing you can add the cost price. So the cost price is how much we purchased this. So let's say we purchased for 200,000, right? So, okay, for 200,000 naira. Now the account is cost of goods sold. This is selected by default, which is the right one, but you can also add any other thing. But this is the right ledger it should be on, cost of goods sold. Okay, so we move on to the next. Now, if you were a service-based company, at this point you literally don't need to click on track inventory. What I mean is that let's say you're a service-based company, you only do consulting. So I'm coming back to this. Let's say consulting, right? Or you do app development. So what happens now? It's no longer a goods, rather it's a service. And at this point, right, this purchase, this is not necessary for you. You can just toggle this off and you put only the selling price, right? And you can just save this, but you don't need to put on the track inventory, right? So that's how you can go about this if you're a service-based company. But going back to our original state, pack of fish, it's a goods, right? So this is our cost, put our purchase price back 200, and at this point we need to toggle this on so we can track our inventory, right? So we click on track your inventory, the inventory account. This is, let's say, inventory assets. Then you get to select, these are the two options, either use the weighted average cost or you go with your FIFO, first in, first out. All right. So we're going to work with FIFO. So now at this point now, we have what we call reorder point. Reorder point is more of like that point whereby if your goods get to that number, the system understand that we are due to reorder. So you can get a notification to the email you signed up with in order for you to get a reminder notification for you to top up. So we say our reorder point is 10. Okay, so now we save this inventory. Right now, this item has been added. Before we move further, right, because I want to show you how dynamic Zoho Books and Zoho Inventory works. So let's go back to Zoho Inventory. Look at this item we created. This item will also reflect on our Zoho Inventory. So we go back to Zoho Inventory, right? We go to the item, go back to the item section here. Now look at the item we just created. As you can see, so this is Zoho Inventory, right? The item is already populating here. So if I go back to Zoho Books, right, you see it's the same thing. So this video, we're going to go through this whole video side by side, Zoho Books and Zoho Inventory. So you can see how two of them can work as one, right, for your company. And I'm going to give you a proper breakdown on how role department people can come on board and use this system. All right, so now as you can see, the items are already being listed here. We've listed this item. Now moving on, right, the next thing, if you notice, our opening stock is 0. That is because we are adding the item one after the other. So in Zoho Books and Zoho Inventory, right, if you're adding your items in bulk, right, let's say you're importing your item, automatically when you click and you see import with opening stock, the system will give you an Excel template format. So at that point, you just put in your inventory on that Excel, put in all the numbers. So what happens when you import that back into the system? You don't need to fill this manually like the way you see I'm doing right now. So that's the benefit of using the imports. But for this, right, we are only creating this one after the other single. So the point, this is the flow of Zoho Books. First, you create the item. It won't prompt you to put the opening stock. So once you've saved the item, you can now add the opening stock. So as you can see, we can just quickly add our opening stock here. So we go back to adjust stock, right? Or if you look at the Zoho inventory, you notice we still have the same thing here, right? Opening stock, zero, and all that. So we can click opening stock. Now, okay, let me come back to this so you understand how this works best. Okay, so you see the reorder point you added, it's already listed here as 10. Now, for every item, there is a feature that they call warehouse. Warehouse is that feature that helps you to segment your items so that you can have warehouse one or storeroom one, storeroom two, storeroom three. Each of these storerooms have different stocks. So the benefit of this, so that you know that, let's say storeroom one has 10, storeroom two has 3, storeroom 5 has 20. So that is what location does for you in Zoho, right? Location helps bring out all your storeroom. So you can use this in different methods, right? It could be you can just write each of the location as your local storeroom, or for some organizations, we've also done this for. They use this as their different branch. Let's say a business, you have one in Lagos, one in Abuja, one in another place. So you can put all those items, all those locations under your location here. And each time you upload an item, you indicate how many quantity you're uploading that will sit on that particular location, so that the system can understand that each location has its different number. And the best benefit of this is that, so that if one of the location is low on stock, you know how you do it, you can take from another location and sell to your customer. But what this does is that you can now transfer from the particular store that has an excess, transfer it to the other location to give them more stock so they can work with. So that is one of the beauty of the location feature in Zoho. It's very important. It's something we need to really take note of. So looking at that right now, as you can see, this is the store location. So at any point when you're adding the inventory items themselves, right? So once we go back to adjust stock, right? If you notice at this point here, we need to select the particular location. So let's say we are working with this code room B, which is location 2. And at this point, what is the quantity we are to add on? Let's say the opening stock we want to add is 50. Okay, add 50. Now, once you're done with that, the next thing, this is the cost price. By default, the system will pick it up because this is the cost price we use when creating the item. Now, last, select the reason. So it's more of like inventory reevaluation. So once you're done with this, right, you select the location, we click on convert to adjusted, right? So now if we go back to location, we have 50 stock here right now, as you can see 50, but this 50, it's just vague. We don't know which location has this 50. So you go back to location. Now we see that this is the store that has that 50 item. And the same thing we've done, right? It's already populated in Zoho inventory. All we just need to do, we just need to refresh, and that item has been populated already. Okay, so as you can see, this is the item. We have your 50, and that's how the system works. So now let's also add another store, another item to this code room A. But let us do that from the inventory module. So let's go back to just stock. Okay, select the location. Let's say this is code room A. So how many are we adding? Let's say 100 for this. Okay. This reorder point is already selected, inventory reevaluation, and we click on convert to adjusted. Okay, so now we have 100. So go back to location. Now you see 100 stock on hand for this code room, location 1, code room B, location 2. So this is the total stock item for this. So in total, we have 150 items, but they are spread across different location. So that's for the location, right? So now I'm in Zoho inventory, as you can see, Zoho inventory. So the next thing now, let us look at the transaction module here. So what transaction means is that whenever any transaction that has occurred on any of this item, you would see that transaction here. That's the idea of this. Then we have your history. So the history means it shows you what as any action is being taken on each of these items, you're going to see that on the history. As you can see, as of this date and as of this time, this is when we created the item. So that's for this. If we let's jump into Zoho Books, we go is the same thing, transaction, no transaction, history, the same thing. So this is the benefit of integrating the Zoho Books and the Zoho CRM to work together as one. It's so nice when you use this method. So now we are done with the item module, and you can see we have this pack of fish, 500,000 for the cost. And this is what we have stock in hand, and we are good to go. Before we leave the item module, right, I want to point this to your attention. Now, whenever this also applies to Zoho CRM, whenever you see this option, something like this, it's telling you can modify this view, how you can modify it to best suit your view. So let's go into this. Let's see what this has to us. Customize your column. So these are the ones you see that are toggled on by default. These are the ones we are currently seeing. So now, if you notice, our purchase price is not selected, so we can't see our purchase price there. So let's select. We want to see the purchase price. What else? We want to see the vendor name, not necessary. We want to see the reorder level. Yes, so we know when the reorder is due. So let's click save. So what happens if we go to the item? As you can see, let's go all the way. So we see the name of the item. It's more of like your Google Sheet or your Excel. You just come here. You can also drag this like this to readjust the SKU, purchase description. Description is there, your rates. Okay, let's save this first. Okay, so you can always rearrange this drag just to make it look the best way you feel is nice for you. Okay, now you see the reorder level is 10, and we added another thing. Here's the purchase rate. So that's how you can work with this feature here. Whenever I see this, just know you can customize them. So now let's jump to the inventory section here. Okay, so now under the inventory section, we have our inventory adjustments. So let's leave. So what this inventory adjustment does is that, right, it takes record. Whenever you do any inventory change adjustments, like the one we just did recently, automatically when you come to inventory adjustment module, you'll see a list of those items there. So now let's track this. This is the 12th of August. This is the one we just did right now, adjusted, as you can see. So as you can see, this is the inventory we just created right now. Okay, so that's for this. Okay, so as you can see, you get to see the inventory adjusted there. So let's check for Zoho inventory itself. So on Zoho inventory, this is the inventory module, as you can see. Now it is not the same as what you're seeing in Zoho Books. But let's go back to inventory adjustments. Now you would see this is the same thing right here now. I don't know if you notice, it's the same thing we have in Zoho Books. That's the same thing we have in Zoho inventory. So that is the beauty of when both of the systems are integrated to work together as one. We have a seamless interface and we see the same thing. So we don't have any discrepancy in our data. You know, inventory items are very, very complicated, especially when you get little tiny errors. It's something we don't want to experience. So that's why Zoho had this initiative of making both of the system to work as one. If you want it, so we can also implement that and make it possible, as you can see. So right, that's for the inventory. Now moving on to the sales, we are back to Zoho Book. So each time I toggle between application, you would notice, just look at the top corner here, and I'll also make mention of that. So now I've moved back to Zoho Books, right? So on the Zoho Books, you notice before I move forward, Zoho Books inventory, we only have inventory adjustments here. But let me go back to Zoho inventory. If we go to inventory, right, we see we have all the options. And this is the reason why Zoho Books cannot handle complex inventory management the way Zoho inventory would handle it. So that's why you notice here we have your assemblies, you have your inventory adjustment, you have packages, you also have you have packages, you have shipment, transfer orders, move orders, put away, and the rest. You see the difference, right? That is why Zoho inventory is it's more complex compared to Zoho books in terms of handling complex inventory. Okay, so that's why you notice that's the difference. So now let's go back to Zoho books. Okay, so now we've touched on the inventory. So when it comes to this inventory valuation, we're going to explain more of this when we move to Zoho inventory fully. But I'm doing this side by side. So you notice that like for the item here, which we've already discussed, we've touched on Zoho books, is the same thing on Zoho inventory. So when I come into Zoho inventory, we might not touch too much on this because you now get the logic. But the Zoho inventory and those areas that is quite different from Zoho inventory. When I come to Zoho inventory, we're going to dive deep into that. So now leaving this, let's go back to sales. Now, if you notice, this is what we have in the sales, right? We have our customer, we have our quotation, and now the customer is where you can list your customer into the system. Okay, so let's go back. So what this means is that you can add customers into Zoho books through imports. You can import your customers in bulk into your system, right? Or you can just manually add them as you go. So now let us add a new customer as a test. So let me add another one. Let me say this customer is the TechCom Africa Zoho. Okay, so let's just say this is a customer name. Now the display name, let's just take this. Okay, now we can add our email, which is info@techcomafrica.com.ng. All right. So what else? Now there is something I did here. I did that intentionally. See, the system has already informed me that an email address already exists. Then click on view and bring it. So this helps you to handle duplication, right? So the best way for me to help you to make you understand this is to try it so you see how the system bounced that. So now let's just do it.com like this. Okay. Oh, I mistakenly saved it quickly. So let's go back. We've added the info@techcom.com. Let's add a random number. Okay, this is just a random number. Then go all the way down. Now, if you have a specific tax rate for this particular company, this is the option where you can just add that, right? Or you can just add the tax for this company. Okay, to associate more than one tax, you need to create a tax group. So this is the section here. Now you have your company ID, right? You can add the company ID, right? Or their government tax ID. You can just type that here. Currency that you are transacting with this customer, you can put that here. So for most of us that you're not using, at least if you're not using the higher tier plan of Zoho, you might not have this available for you, right? Because this helps you in terms of handling multiple currencies for companies. Now, let me give you a typical example. Now, if I have this company, right, and I know most times I send invoices to this particular customer in different currencies. So what you can do, right? You can save this particular customer one, save it in the first currency, save the other cost, save it again, and put a different currency. So what happens is that, or even if you put let's say you put USD for this customer, this system is already, when you're setting up your system, you have your base currency for your country. So your base currency can be USD, and a particular customer, you can put it in Naira. Your base currency can be Naira, or a particular particular company, your customer, you can put it in another currency, be it euro, be it pounds, be it the UAE, so any currency, right? So that's the idea. You can also put it in like dirham. So it depends. So that's the idea of this. You can put this in different currencies. So now let's take this back to Naira. Okay. Now, the next thing, if you want to add any other documents, you just add this. Okay, so you have the address module, you can just add address for those customers, contact person. This is, you can utilize this for when you have this particular company, which is the Techcom Africa Tech. So if you want, this is our company, Techcom Africa Limited. So now let's say in Techcom Africa, I have two, three, four persons, three, four persons. So this is where you can add all those people individually into the system. Now, custom field is when you've added a custom field, right? Let's say a typical example of how custom field works. You know, right now on this module, you can see company name, you can see display name. Or let's say you want to add another thing, which is like company LinkedIn profile, company LinkedIn link. You want to add that somewhere here, like company LinkedIn link. So this is where custom field works for. So you add that custom field of company LinkedIn profile. And when you come to custom field, those custom field you added will reflect here. So that's the idea of how custom field works. Then we have reporting tags and we have remarks. Remarks is basically for internal use. You can just put in your remarks here for this particular client, right? A typical example is that this this client doesn't like delays, right? So what happens is that your team can use this remark to profile this client and know how best to serve them properly. So that's how the remark works. So once you do, let's say this. Okay, so we just created this company, which is the Techcom Africa Zoho. Okay, let's go back to inventory, go back to sales, customer. Okay, so you see the company, we just created this, the Techcom Africa Zoho. Okay, so that's it. So we're good. Now you notice we have invite portal. This is where you can invite your clients. They're going to have their own portal access to see the transactions that has occurred between you and them, to see the mails and also to see their statements. So that is when you share them the invite portal. They can get all those other access. Okay, so now we have your comments. You can put comments here related to the customer transaction, whatever transaction that has happened on this customer will reflect here. And this is Zoho inventory, right? You know, remember we're doing this side by side. This is Zoho inventory. So let's go back to sales, customer. This is the customer we just created. Now you can see everything concerning transactions, right? The next we have your mails, we have your statement. So now this is exactly what the customer module looks like. So let's jump back into Zoho Books. Okay, so now we have our quotes. Quote is where you can create your estimate quotation for a client, right? So we have quotes here, but in Zoho inventory, you have sales order. Why do you have sales order? Because for the inventory person in charge, they need to raise a sales order depending on your process, because most organization, as an organization, right, your salesperson might not, you don't want them to create invoice, because invoice is the last entry point, which is an official statement, right? So you don't want them to create an invoice. Rather, you want them to create a sales order. So once they create the sales order, it's more of like if a customer talks to them, we want to get XXX things, we want to get this item. So what happens is that they raise the sales order, so the admin, which could be the account person or the manager, would approve that sales order so that it becomes an invoice. Then that invoice will be sent to the client. So once the client makes the payment, your account team members, not the salesperson, your account team confirms the payment has been received to the bank in the bank account. And once that payment has been confirmed, the next thing is your account team member or the manager, whoever, but the next person who has that role will now record the payment. So that is why you have sales order here, so that the low level staffs or the staffs that don't have access to those intricate informations, they work with sales order. They just create sales order and push it to the next level person. The person converts and and records that sales order from a sales order to the invoice. So that's the idea of sales order in Zoho inventory. And if you go back to Zoho books, that is also the idea of books of quotes. So quotation is more of like, you know that there is a back and forth that will happen on this particular cost. So this is the pricing when you go back to negotiation and all that. So the reason for raising quotes is because most times if you raise a quote, right, you won't have what we call that receivable. You understand? You won't raise a quotation. You won't have it won't hit your what's it called your balance sheet. It won't hit your balance sheet. So that's the benefit of this, and it helps you stay afloat. Stay afloat in the sense that no your those invoices, the quotation, it doesn't hit your balance sheet. And you can just ignore it because it will not count as it won't hit your balance sheet. Okay, so that's for that. So the next thing is the quotation. So we can quickly create a quote here. Let's say we want to create a quote for the same company we just created right now. Okay. Then after that, let's say this is a quotation number. So salesperson is the option here where you can put your sales team members, right? This helps you to be able to track team members who are responsible for this. So let me just do one sales example. Let me add promise here. You can put their email, but the major thing, put the name. So once you've added the name, the next thing you put the date here, right? Expiry date of this invoice. So let's say it's going to expire on the 26th. And the next thing is for you to you can put the subject of this. So the next thing, let us add the item. So we want to do pack of fish here, right? So the pack of this fish. This is, if you notice at this point now, notice the system is telling us we have up to 150 kg, 150 stock is available, right? So whatever item we select here will be what will be left. So let's say we want to add 20. That is what this customer wants to get. So 20 of this, right? So we see the total amount. You click on add your VAT, close this. So that is what we want to do. So we can now click on save. You can save and send right from the system, right? So save and send. Then what happens? You can send it to your client directly from here, or you can just cancel. But right now, what happens is that the system has already seen this, and you can now mark this as sent. Okay. So at this point now, this is the quotation that we've just created, right? But in a normal sense, right, at this point, you can convert this to an invoice, right? Converting this to an invoice is pretty straightforward. You can just come here, select convert to invoice, and what happens? System creates the invoice. But now let us go through the inventory route. So let's go back to Zoho inventory. Okay, because for most organizations, this is how your process works. The team member gets to raise a sales order, right? Because they are the one that sells this inventory item. So now we select the customer name, right? We want to give sell to this First Nigeria. Okay, so this is a sales order. Now, if you notice, we are seeing you can see different locations here. So most times you can select the particular location you're selling from, right? And for most organizations, we've done some settings whereby if you have a particular team member that works in this code room A, so the system automatically, once they sign in on their own account, they can only raise from this code room. They won't be able to raise from another code room. Only this one they will be able to raise from. So that's how this one works. So you select the particular one. Then the next thing is for you to select your sales order date, right? So that's today. Now the expected shipment, you can add that here. But the next thing we need to do is if you also want to select your delivery method, you can add that here. The salesperson, like I said, we've already added promise. So it's already reflecting in Zoho inventory. So the next thing is for us to select the item, this pack of fish. Now, what's the quantity we want to sell? We want to sell 20. Okay. So now add our VAT. So the next thing is for us to save and send. So if you want to send it to the client via email, letting them know that this is the sales order, right? You can just click on send. But we don't want to send this. If you notice, the system has already attached the PDF folder of this. So let's cancel this. Okay, so now just mark as confirmed. So when you mark as confirmed, it means you're pushing this to the next level of approval so that they can approve this particular sales order. So once they've been able to approve it from your own end, you can just convert this straight to an invoice, right? Because once you click on convert to invoice, see what happens. Everything you've created stays the same, right? Everything stays the same. This is item we've added already. Look at everything stays the same. The next thing you can just click on save. So automatically this invoice has been created. So this is the invoice we just created, right? For this amount, this is the pack of the fish for 20 units. This is the rate selling price. This is the VAT that we've already added. So this is our total. So at this point now, the next thing, everything shows here and the salesperson is also here. Now, if I jump straight into Zoho Books for this client, I will see that information. So let's go to invoices. So this is the invoice here, the one we just created, sales order 002. Let us confirm. Okay, so this is the item here, 10.10,750,000. Okay, so that's it, 10,750,000. So if you notice, right, this is how both of the system work together as one. Now see, it's still the same thing. Everything is here. So now, after this has been created, the next thing now, the account team, your account team member, your account manager, right, they can see this invoice, and because they are the ones that confirm payments. So the next thing they can do now is to look at this payment and just finalize it. Now, the customer has paid this amount, so they can go back to record payments, right? So when they go to record payments, you see the amount is already listed here. So all you need to do, this is the amount received, the payment date is this, the cash is bank transfer, then which account was it paid to? You can select your bank account it was paid to, and what happens. If you want to add any other document, you can add that here. Then the next thing is for you to save as paid, right? So before we save this, I want to show you another scenario. Let's say the client paid half payment. They paid just 9 million naira. So let's say 9. Okay. So client paid 9 million naira. All right. So 9 million naira. So let's save as paid. See what happens. Now you see the system has recorded that payment, but it's showing partially paid, right? The client has paid half payment. So if you go all the way down here, you will see the balance that is still remaining, 1,750,000. So this is how the system can help you to ensure that at every point you can track everything. So now you can send this invoice to the client once the client has made that payment, right? You can decide to send this to him because so he will see the outstanding balance. So you can download this or you can print this invoice and send to them, or you can just share this with a link. So that's for how this works. So if you jump back into Zoho inventory under the invoices, you see the same thing, partially paid. So the reason for this is that the inventory person, the number they are seeing and what the Zoho books, the account person they are seeing is the same thing. This is very important. So now you see everything is the same. Now moving on, the next thing we need to do, let us finalize a record of this payment. So the client, they reached out to him and the client, they told him that, oh, this is the balance, you need to make the payment. And the client makes that payment, account confirms. So the account team can also go back and confirm and record this payment. So 1,750, this is the final payment. The client made this payment via bank transfer to the same account. So we click on save as, save as paid. There is one thing I missed, right? So every time you need to put in the date. So at any point, right, if you notice this option here, payment received 2 times. So you can also go back and make some adjustments. Depends if you didn't record anything properly. So there's something I want to correct. So that was on this last payment that we received, which is the 1.750. Okay, so if you notice the payment date, this is the payment date. All right, so everything looks fine. All right, so everything is fine. So this is how you can go back into the payment you've recorded to make any adjustment if you didn't get something correctly. Okay, so if you notice, right, we started with the invoice, but due to the cost of recording payment, automatically the system has brought us into our payment receive module. That is just to show you how the system works. The system works that way because all these are connected. So once an invoice has been created and it has been paid, automatically that invoice will drop under the payments received, right? So any invoice you've recorded it will show on payment received. So that's how payment received populates its own data. But you can also go to the new section here and record the payments manually from this route, right? So that's for payments received. So let us go one step up. So these recurring invoices. Recurring invoices helps you to bill one time, create an invoice once, and over time the system follows your rules and keep invoicing your clients. Now, let's say we have a particular client that purchases items from us at least every month, right? We want to create an invoice once, and each month system should be generating that invoice. So we don't need to go back into the system. That is what they call automation. Now, we want to create a recurring invoice for this our client. Let's say for Techcom Africa. Okay. Now, what's the profile name? Techcom recurring. You can add anything you feel. So let's just do this. If you want to add the order number, you can add that as well. Repeats every month. Okay. Then the next thing, because we want to do this every month, starts on this date. Okay. And on what day. So you can leave it as never expire. So never expires means whenever you're ready, you can go back into the system and stop that particular you can go back and stop that particular invoice from sending again. So that's for the recurring invoice. Then the next thing we can do is to move forward. Now we can add the salesperson here. Okay. Then you add the item that we are billing this client recurrently. Most times you don't necessarily need to add items here. So you can also type in your own items here. Let's say it's a monthly repair service. Okay, you can see type it here. See, you can, if it's a service now, it's no longer stock, it's not item. So the quantity can be one. Now, how much is this service? Let's say it's 550 every month. Okay, tax, you put the tax. And at this point, we are good to go. Click on save. So the system will start shooting out these invoices, right? As you can see, your next invoice is on 12th September 2026. So by that time, you will get the next invoice, And once this will just keep going, and once this client has made this payment, right, you can always come back here and record it. All right. So now for the next invoice, you can go to next invoice. You'll see the next invoice here. Okay. Then once you're done with this, the next thing is for you to click on, let's say the client stops or that service you have discontinued it. You can always come back to stop and click on stop. So all these things we're doing is the same thing. It's also reflecting on Zoho inventory. So let's go into Zoho inventory. Okay. So now let's go into, okay, so this hasn't been activated from the backend. Okay, so this is the recurring invoices on the Zoho book section here. So basically that's how you can handle both sections in terms of this. So you've stopped this, it won't send anymore. So now Okay, we've already touched on payment receipt. The next one is a sales receipt. So sales receipt is where you can create your professional sales receipt and send to clients. So an example would be, let's say, okay, let's create one. Select the customer. But right now, let us use from one of our invoices that we've already queued the client for. Okay, so let's use this. Okay, let's go back. All right, so this has been paid because I was saying partially paid earlier. It's like, okay, so now let's use for this, let's raise the sales receipt for this client, First Nigeria. Select the client's name here. First Nigeria. Okay, what was the item we bought? Pack of fish. Pack of fish. How many units? 20. Okay, add your VAT. Okay, so now let's save and send. So this is the sales receipt. Okay, so now this is the sales receipt we created for this item. Now, if we go back into the Zoho inventory, sales receipt. Now, this is the sales receipt we just created. You see how both systems work interchangeably? So that is for the sales receipt. And in case you don't like this template at any time, you can come back here and change it to whichever one you prefer. Okay. So that is for the sales receipt. Now the next thing we are jumping into is now okay, wasn't many things. We've touched on sales receipts, touched on invoice, quote, customer, credit notes. Okay, so credit notes is how you can handle your returns. Let's say if a particular item you raise for a client purchase an item and they want to do a refund of that item, right? So you can raise a credit note to balance that particular item from the invoice that was raised. So that's for the credit note. But most times, this is mainly for the account team, right? So most times, some people won't have access to this, and some accounts for some organization when we do the implementation, they won't have access to this credit note. And at any point, one thing I like about the Zoho system, they try as much as they can not even try, they make it stay. They are very intentional on making sure that you have clarity on each of the product. Now, if you see this is the first time, you can also click on this section here to watch how this works in real time. It's like an attached video that explains this further, right? So you can also take your time, go through this video. So now the next thing, let us leave this whole, we move on to the purchase. So purchase is still the same thing, straightforward. If you go to Zoho inventory, we also have purchase here, the same thing, right? We have the purchase order right here. This is the purchase section, purchase module. So let's start from the inventory. So the first thing you see is your vendors. Vendors are those vendors you can list them into the system. Your vendors, your people you get items from. Right now, you're the one purchasing from them, right? So this is your vendors. You can list your vendors here, or you can use the import function to list your vendors. Now, once you've listed the vendor, the next thing you have your expenses. This is where you can post expenses that you incur in your business. Now, if you go into Zoho Books, right? But for most accounts, your account team, they will be working with Zoho Books often for anything concerning posting of expenses and reconciliation, right? So if you go to the expense module, we see we have the same thing. We have 4 expenses here on Zoho Books itself, 4 expenses. So what happens now is that let us create a new expense. So this is the expense. Is that the expense account? Let's say this expense was for transportation. Let's see if we have that ledger here. Okay, so we have transportation. How much is this transportation? 20,000. Okay, now was it paid through petty cash or from a bank? So let's say petty cash. Okay, now this you have a vendor option here. So vendor option is if this expense is related to this vendor, you can put your vendor information here, right? So this is the vendor information. And okay, I'm going to explain, give you three scenarios how you can work with the expense. So that's for the petty cash. This is just a small expense your team member incurred in terms of their transportation expense. So in all means, right, most times if they have the receipts of that expense, if it's like for Bolt or InDrive or any of those platforms, they can get that invoice from the platform and give it to the account. The accountant can upload it directly here when posting this expense. Okay, so once you do that, the next thing is for you to save this expense. So this is the expense we just posted into the system for transportation on the 12th of August, 20,000. So let's jump into Zoho Books. Let's look at that as well. Expense. So you see, this is the same expense we just posted right now for 20,000 Naira. Okay, so you see it's populating down into the Zoho inventory. So now that's expense, that's scenario one. Scenario two is when you make an expense. You purchased for you now, you purchased new inventory from your vendor and you want to record that expense. Now this is for cost of goods sold, a total of let's say 20 million, right? For an expense you purchased. So it was paid through your bank accounts. Okay. Now let's say we purchase this from our vendor. Let's say this is our vendor, ITEL Global, right? For the item we purchased, and we can just record post this as a vendor. Now the system also gives you an option whereby you can add customer name. So if this inventory, no, let's save this and I'll show you another option how you can use your customer name. So let's go all the way and we're done with this. Now let's save this. So this is a second scenario of an expense that was made to a vendor, right? You purchase an item from a vendor, so you can record it. Now, the third expense, third scenario, it's when you made an expense on behalf of a client. So that is the other third expense. So now, let's say it's for advertising, right? Or anything. Let's say this is the expense, it's of 50. Okay, now we made this payment from our bank, right? Now we made this payment, we made this expense for our customer. This is the customer. Now, if you notice, we have this option of billable. What this means is that if this customer is supposed to pay us back for this expense of 50,000, we just need to select billable. But if this customer is not supposed to pay us back, you just take this off, right? So that's how this billable works. So now, because of if you don't select billable, we don't select billable and we save, automatically this transaction, it just closes this way. But now let us select edit, go back into that in this expense and we select billable, meaning this client is supposed to pay us this. We click on save. See what happens. We can now convert this to an invoice and bill it to this first Nigeria client. So let's go back to convert to invoice. See what happens. We've moved down to invoice. First Nigeria. This is the particular expenses, right? Now, this is you see, the advertising and marketing has already been captured. Now we can add VAT if it is necessary, and we can click save and send. So this means that expense will be ticked as billable to this client. So we just mark this so the client gets to pay. So you just click on save and send. Now we've sent this to the client. The client acknowledges, okay, I've gotten it, I'm going to pay. So now we can come back and record that our expense, record the payments. You see, the client gave us a transfer. Save as paid. You see how the system works. Everything is connected. So the expense we build we made on behalf of a client, we build it back to the client has paid us back that expense. So that's the circle of that. Okay, so moving on. So that's we touching on the expense. So we are done with the expense right now. So these are all the expenses we've incurred. Now, you remember when we talked on recurring invoices? Now we have recurring expenses. It's the same thing. That expense that is recurring, you can create the expense once. So periodically that expense is being generated back to you. So that's the idea of the recurring expense. So that's how the recurring expense works. So the next we're looking at is the bill. So what bill does is that those payments that you would want to make, but you're not making that payment immediately. So for instance, the perfect example is your rent. As you can see, you owe money. It's as if you've purchased something for your business and you don't have to repay it immediately, then you record it as a bill. Okay. So any item you've already purchased for your business and you're not paying for that, it's like you're owing that vendor. You can generate it as a bill. So difference between bill and expense is that expense, you've already paid for it, right? You record your expense. Why bill? You have not made that payment, but it's a future payment you ought to pay. You record it as a bill. So, for example, your rent. I'll use that as an example. Your house, your rent, your office rent of your store, your house rent. So you can use that as a bill because you're already enjoying that service, right? But you ought to pay at a particular time. So that's what the bill does. So you can create a bill. Now let's create a bill. Now you can put this is the bill, right, from this particular person. Then the next thing, you can go all the way down, put the bill number 001, just start a sequence so you can work with that all through. Then the next thing, the bill date. So when you see the bill date, what you need to do, right? So if this is, let's say it's going to be due next year. So you go select that particular time, put that here, okay? So you see bill date is in the future. Now, then the due date. Okay, so what this means is that the bill date, that's the date at which this bill will start counting. Okay, so let's go all the way back. So the bill dates, you can select today. This is the day we created it. So when is it due? So the due date should be in the future. Let's say by August. Okay, so you see, let's say this is our office rent. Okay, office yearly rent due by August 2027. Okay, so this is the rent, this is the due. Then the account, right? What account you want this to fall under? So if you notice, right, you can automatically what you see here, you see your charts of account directly here. So now for office rent, like you can use the right particular chart. So now let's go through all this. You can say, oh, okay, so you can select the particular rent, the particular chart of account here. So I'm just looking for the right one that works perfectly. So under the expense, okay, let's see. Now, if you notice, I want to use something like home, right? But I can't find it. But what I can do now, I can create an additional ledger for that chart. So I'm going to still post it under expense. So it's going to be expense house or office rent. So let's create a new ledger here. So let's say this is an expense. Okay. So the account name should be office rent. So now we want to make this a sub account to what parent account? So okay, so there's none that relates with it. So let's just untick this, right? Let me give you a perfect example of what this when you can use this. Let's say this is an advertising. Here we just have only advertising and marketing. So once you select advertising and marketing, you can now change this to, let's say, Facebook ad. Do you understand what this means? It means that this Facebook ad is a sub account under this parent advertising and marketing. So that's how you can use that. But now let me go back to what I came to do earlier. So let's change it to house rent. Let us let house rent be a standard ledger on its own. So we can select house rent under expense and we can click save and send. Save and select. So what happens now, you see on our account, we have office rent here, which is under our expense. So when you go to expense, as you can see, office rent falls underneath here. Office rent. So that's the how you can work with it. So now this is quantity, just leave that as 1. So let's say the rent is 20. So this is 20 million. Start up to. Okay, so that's up to. So now, as you can see, you can add the customer details. That's if this is related to a customer, but this bill is not related to a customer, so it's just our own. So we can click save and open. So this bill has been created right now for our office yearly rent due by August 2027. This is a bill. So what happens is that over time, right? Once this is due, if you go back to our bill, so we can start seeing it from current bill. Now this is the one we just created. Okay, August 12th. Now if this is the vendor name, this is the transaction. Click on the transaction. So we can see it for what it is. So if you go all the way down, you see office rent. So that's how you can create bill. Now the next one is the recurring bills, right? It's the same thing. Those bills that are recurring, you can use them under the recurring bill. Then you have your payment made. Once any bill has been paid, recorded as paid, it's going to reflect here. And lastly, you have vendor credit. So vendor credit is once a particular vendor needs to do maybe an item that was supplied to you, right? And you are requesting for a refund from that vendor. You just create a credit note and send to the vendor. Okay, so moving on, we are done with the purchase. And also, so we don't forget everything we've been doing so far is also reflecting on our Zoho inventory. So let's go to the bills. You can see what we've done so far, right? This is the bill we created for yearly rent. You see everything we've done so far, purchases received, purchase order, and the rest. We've been able to cover that. So let's wrap up on Zoho Book so we can quickly touch on Zoho inventory in some areas. So now that is for that. Now we have time tracking. I'm not going to explain much on this. Time tracking, what this means is that it's for you to track those particular time, the time you spent on different projects. So you can create a time tracking and track how much was spent. And those options can be billed or non-billed. So that's for time tracking. It goes together with timesheet. Most organization, you won't, for some people, you might not need, you won't be using this, right? So let's move on to the next, which is banking. So banking is where you can connect your banks, right? Any of your accounts, you can attach it here. And you can also import statements to each of those particular banks. Now you see, I want to import a statement, select the bank. So what you need to do, your statement from your bank, you can export it and you upload it here. And once you're done with that, you can start seeing your statements. They will be tagged under the right ledgers. Okay, so that's for banking. The next is accountants, account module. This is where manual journal, you can do your manual reconciliation, bulk update. There's an update you want to make that should reflect around across your invoice, your credit note, purchase order, expense bill. So you can use the bulk update to correct this. You have currency adjustment where you can make some adjustments on a currency. Then you have chart of account. So if you remember when I added expense, when I added house rent, right? So this is how that is being done. So if you go all the way down, you see all the chart of accounts. Okay, so if you notice all these are under expenses. So I'm looking for the one we just created, which is I think office rent, right? Okay, so rent expenses. That's it. So you can also import your chart of accounts, or you can add your own manual. You can just bring in your own you can just add it directly like what I did earlier. You just select the particular charts and just go along with it. So that's for the chart. Then you have budget, right? You have transaction locking and the rest. So we're just going to go directly into report. So for all the Zoho applications, right, they give you an extensive reporting system. What this does is that it gives you up to 83 reporting templates. This is from profit and loss, cash flow, balance sheets, all those profits. You can just go through them, select the right report that you want to see, and you just select, let's say you want to select your profit and loss. Click on profit and loss. Okay, now we see the profit and loss statement so far. You can also export this in any of this format or print it out. And another thing, you can modify this or you can filter it based on how you would want. So this is currently showing you for this month. So you can go all the way back to for this year and just modify this based on how you prefer. So that's for the profit and loss, and that's the same thing for other reports. So if you go to balance sheet, you see, okay, so the account persons, you would understand this, right? You start seeing the figures and the numbers. You can also export this and you're good to go. So moving on, so let's jump into Zoho inventory and we continue from the reports. So if you notice, Zoho Books report focus more on the financial reporting. So if you go to report on Zoho inventory, it also focuses more on the inventory reports, right? As you can see, sales by customer, this is also available in Zoho Books. Sales by item is also available in Zoho Books. So, but you won't see something like, what's it called? Okay, let's look for this. Profit and loss. You see, so we can get profit and loss from Zoho inventory. So we have profit and loss on Zoho Books. So you see the difference between both applications. This tackles more finance account reports. Why Zoho Books Zoho inventory gives you more of inventory reports. Okay, so that's for the inventory. So now let us jump into some of those small difference between Zoho inventory and Zoho Books. So now let's go to the inventory module of Zoho, the inventory module. Okay, so now if you notice, these are the differences between the Zoho Books and Zoho inventory. So let's jump into Zoho inventory and let us look at these key modules. So under the inventory. Now, if you notice on the inventory module, we don't have all this in Zoho Books. And that's the reason. This is where Zoho inventory shows more functionalities because it tackles more of inventory. Now, if you notice, the dashboard is quite different compared to Zoho Books. From here, you can see our top selling items here. This is Zoho inventory. You get to see for this month, and you can filter this based on today and the rest. Now, if we go all the way down, we can see sales, right? To be packed to be shipped. You see all those data here based on what we've been able to do so far. Now, if you notice, this is our top stocked items by quantity, by value, and the rest. So that's for you. That's what Zoho inventory. Zoho inventory gives you more robust data in terms of inventory tracking. Now, let's look at assemblies, right? So this was also modified recently. So if you notice, right, what assembly is it is actually used to track manufacturing or bundling processes where you can combine multiple raw items to build a single finished product, right? So if you notice, what this simply means is that when you have a tabletop, your legs, screw, all those items, when you bring different raw materials together to make a particular single finished product, that is what assemblies does. So, for example, for your kind of business, right? Let's say for the fish industry, you might not have there's no, you can use for, let's say for people who bring items together, right? Now let's look at something. The same way you have composite item. Composite item is when you bring multiple products, bring them together and sell them as one. Let's say if you're a fashion company, you bring your jeans, you bring the shirt, you bring the top and sell it as a full product. That is what composite item does. Now look at it in that same light in terms of assemblies. Assembly is when you bring those same different raw materials in order to produce one full item. That is what the assemblies does, right? So the next one you see is the inventory adjustment, which comes with Zoho books too. You can make adjustment of those items directly from this section, right? Now you have packages. So packages is where you log items that are supposed to be boxed up and prepared for customers, right? So for instance, packages is quite different from shipping. Now let me say an example is, okay, so let's create one particular item. So let's say let's go to the sales order. Remember this sales order we've already, okay, now let's create a fresh sales order for this particular item. First, okay, the next thing, let's go all the way down to, this is the item. Okay, now let's just say, let's say 3 this time. Okay, save and send. Okay, so this has been sent. So now if this particular item now, we've confirmed this. So if we go back to our inventory, right? Under inventory adjustments, no, under packages, I mean, so let's go back to packages. So now we can create a new package for that same customer. First Nigeria. This is the package we just created right now. Okay. So the packet slip, we can add a generic number, or you can just click this section here. I will always advise you use this. So the system can automatically keep generating this for you, right? So just use this method, it's fine. So package 0001, because it's starting from the beginning. So package type. So you can also add your different package type here, right? So let's add one. So let's say the name is, okay, let's say box 1. The dimension is, let me just add something, is 125. This just helps you to know the different sizes. I'm just putting something, the maximum weight is, okay, let's say 280. Okay, so we've not selected the heights. Okay, so save here. Okay, so now this is one of the packages. So this is package type, but for some people you might not use this. So package type is if you have different packaging size, you can use this to put in those items here. So they know that this is the package type that this item should be packed in. Okay, so that's for that. Then the other thing, one thing you need to notice, these ones that are marked asterisk, they are compulsory, you must fill, right? So the date is already fixed. Now this is the item we added here. Okay, so the order 20. Okay, no, this is not the item we wanted to add. This is the already item that we've closed. Now let's go back to, let's cancel this. Let's go back to this item, right? Under our sales, go back to the sales order we generated just now. Okay, this is the one. Click on mark as confirmed. Okay, so this is the sales item here. So let's go back to our packages. New for this customer. Okay, so this is the one we just added right now. So how do we know? Let's go back. Yes, this is the number we added, 3, right? So package, nothing. So now what we need to do, now, quantity to pack at this point here, if those 3 items are to be packed, if those 3 items are to be packed, this is the item we need to ship. You can just select 3. If it's just 2, you select 2, right? But let's say this is a 3. If you have any internal notes, you just add it here so they know what they're doing. Okay, so now let's click on save. So now you notice the package has been packed, but it has not been shipped. Now, if we go back to the home page, just want you to see how the system works. Now, if you notice to be packed is 2, right? If you click into this, we should see that item. This is the one we just added right now. Okay, so you see, if you scroll down, you see it has been invoiced, blue, payment, paid, packed, shipped, no. So all we need to do at this point now is to go back into our inventory, right? We've already added the packaged, right? So if you go back to inventory package, now it has a Kanban view right here. So if you notice, this is the ones we've packed but not shipped. This is the one that we've shipped package, and this is one that has been delivered. So this is the 3 processes that we need to always follow for the store people, the store managers. So right now, if you notice packages, it has been filled. So now this particular item, now if we say this item has been packed, right? So the next thing, if the client, the delivery people comes, the dispatch riders, they are here. So now we can just ship this. If you have all these logistic platforms, ship via carrier, like all those courier services, when it comes to like Ops, FedEx, and the rest, you can use this section here. But you need to have an integration with any of them. Or if you don't have that, right, all you just need to do, just do it. Ship as manual. This means your local delivery person has already picked that product and they are about to ship it. So when it comes to shipping order, I will also advise just use the auto generate, right? So you don't have to keep typing all the system will just follow the sequence and start giving you the series. So any other shipped item will be shipped 0002 and like that. So the shipped date, if it was shipped today, right? The delivery driver came today to take this item. You can select this. How did they come to pick it, right? So you can just put, let's say my local dispatch. Okay, if you have a tracking number, you can add that. So at this point, your tracking URL, you can add all those information. So at this point, if at the point of you creating the shipment, this order has been delivered, you can just click shipment already delivered, right? So you can put the delivery date and the rest. But let us go through the process. Let's leave this. Let's just save this. Okay, so now we've selected this item as shipped. So now let's go back to our home page. Now, if you notice, we have to be shipped 0, right? So let's refresh this. Okay, so all we need to do at this particular point, you see, package status change from not shipped to shipped by this. So this helps us to also see a time tracking of what activities that has happened on the system. So let's go back to the inventory. Now, if you notice, go back to our package. Now you see initially this was around packed, not shipped. Now it has moved from shipped to delivered. So from here, rather than going back to this section here, and to finalize the shipment. So we can from this same module here and just move this, right? Mark as delivered. You understand? So it means once you mark as delivered, the system will move this to this section here. So let's just mark it as delivered. So it was delivered at this time. Do you want to send delivery notification to customer? You can toggle this on if you want the customer to receive that notification. If you don't, proceed. Okay, so now it has moved from this to this. So the idea of this is that as you start processing all your inventory, this is the place you come to packages. You would see all the packages, right, in the right sections. The ones that are shipped, you will see them not shipped. The one that has been shipped, the ones that has been delivered and packaged, you see them all under this section. So now once it has been packaged, has been delivered, it means that this process is complete. So if you go back to shipment, now you can see that this particular shipment from a local dispatch, right, it has been delivered. And anytime you can also download this and send it to the client, right, informing the client that, oh, sir, this particular thing has been delivered. You can just save it, print, send it to the client, or you can send a mail informing the client that this has been delivered. All right, so that's for that. Now let's look at this other section here. So I've been able to show you assemblies, inventory adjustment, which also comes in Zoho books. I've showed you packages. I've showed you how the shipment works and how to move from one stage to another. Yeah. And now let us look at the transfer order, move order, move order, and put away. So now, what is transfer order? Transfer order, right? This helps you to manage the official shipment of inventory from one warehouse or a branch or a store. That's your normal cold room store to another location. Let me show you a perfect example. Let's go back to an item so we understand what we're doing. So pack of fish. Now look at this item. This is the current item we have. After all the items we've raised, go to our location. Now you see we don't have any in cold room oil, granite oil, the third one. So let's say we want to move 10 from code room A to code room B. That is where transfer order comes in. So let's go back to transfer order. Okay, create a transfer order. So now let's select transfer order number. You understand, like I explained earlier, we always advise use this to elect this. So the system just gives you generic number. System always does justice to this. So you see the way the acronym they use TO, meaning transfer order 0001, meaning one is the first transfer order we've initiated on this system. So when is the date are we are initiating this transfer order on this date? What's the reason of this transfer order? As you notice, this is not marked asterisk, it's not red, so it's not compulsory, but let's just fill so we can have data to back this up. Let's say low stock on the granules oil store. Okay, that's why we are doing this transfer. Now, where is the source? We are transferring from source A, transferring to this. Okay, so what is the item? This is the item we are transferring. Okay, so this is the current availability of this item. This store has 60, like we confirmed. So transfer quantity. Let's say we want to transfer 10, like we said. Okay. Now, if we want to do multiple transfers to other stores, we can also select another item. But right now, we are only doing one transfer. So we close this. Okay. So once we're done with this pack of fish for this, now we click on initiate transfer. So if you click on here, you can see mark as transferred and all that. So let's just initiate a transfer. So this is a transfer order in transit. So let's go all the way down. Now this is just to initiate it. Now once you send this, right, the next person, which is the boss, the admin, they will approve this. And once they approve this, you can now mark it as transferred. So it was transferred on this same day. We click on save. Now this transfer order, the process is complete, right? We moved 10 from this. So let's go back to our items now. So let's go back to this pack of fish, go back to locations. Now notice what happens. This was 60 earlier. Now we now have 50 because we've pushed 10 to this particular location. All right. So if you remember what I said earlier, we have transaction. Now we should start having transaction information here because we've done so many things on the system so far. So that's for our transaction section. And now if you go to history, we see all this back and forth that has occurred on that item. Okay. So that's for this. And okay, so we've been able to touch on what's that, the transfer order to inventory. We just touched on transfer order. So we have move order. So what's move order? So this is used to track the internal relocation of stocks that are within the same warehouse. For example, when you're moving an item from a particular area to a specific shelf. So this, transfer order is when you're moving from one location or one warehouse from one store to another entire new warehouse. That is for transfer order. Why move away order is when you're just moving an item from that same location, right? But you're moving it from a shelf to another shelf. So most people might not find a use for this, but for that's why I said inventory is a big complex inventory system that was built for big industry. So it means that, for instance, the perfect example, let's say you go to your big grocery stores, they have different shelves in a particular store location. So the process of them moving one product from a particular shelf to a new shelf, or they are not taking that product outside from that store. So that is what move order does. You're moving an order from one shelf or one space to another space, or still in that same location. That is what move order does. So if you let's see how it works. So let's go back into this, make this automated, save. Now location name, right? So you just select your location name and you're good to go with that. So that's how this works. So let's leave this. So the other option we have here is what we call the put away or put away store, right? So this is more of like this is a structured process whereby you're receiving new products or new goods from suppliers, and you're documenting that product, and you're also noting which storage you are to put that product in. This is mainly when you're receiving a new item, a new store, a new product from your vendor. And let's say the vendor supplied 20, right? So you raise a put away order to back up the fact that that 20 was what the vendor brought in order to summarize this whole process, right? You see this some of the different similarities with Zoho Books and Zoho Inventory, and you can also see the difference with Zoho Books and Zoho Inventory. Zoho Inventory helps you to tackle more complex features in terms of inventory management, while Zoho Books just does the basic one, right? So if you notice here, some features have not been selected. So once you come to configure feature, you can just select what you want to select here. So at this point, you can just select any of this, right? Pick list and the rest, but just so you know, that feature is also available. So, right, I'm looking at everything we've just gone through. So, in order for me to do a summary of what we've been able to do so far, this is the home page of the Zoho inventory, and this is how the home page of the Zoho books looks. See the difference? So inventory focuses more on your inventory item, while Zoho books focus more on counts, the finance, the money, right? So if you notice, the inventory is quite different compared to Zoho Books inventory, because this is where Zoho Books limitation starts in inventory. It's not built to handle complex inventory systems, right? So if you go back to our item, you notice we only have one item. But if you go to Zoho Books, Zoho inventory, we have multiple composite items. So composite item is when you group three or two different items, bring them together as one to sell as one product. Okay. So for instance, now let's say you're doing a promo. You can bring two of your single items, put them together and sell them as one. So let me just show you how that works. So let's say this is the new item. Let's say promo, say promo fish. Okay, so it's an assembly, a group of items combined together to be tracked and managed as a single item, you see. Now, the unit of this, let's say it's kg. Okay, so now let's select the items right here. The first item would be this. Okay, now the second item, let's add a new item just for this test. Fish wrap. Let's say roll. Okay. Let me just go straight to the key thing. Let's say this is in pieces. Okay. Then what else? We add our selling price for this. Let's say 50. Now this is 20. Okay. Track inventory. So this is me creating a new inventory. Okay. What remains? We are good to go. The other points, 10. Okay, what else? Preferred vendor description. I think that's about it. What else? Is there anything missing? Okay, category, we're filling all that. Okay, so let's save this. All right, so now you see we've added this second fish row one. So now these two items, right? The total amount is this, as you can see here, right? 50 plus 50, 500 plus 50, total of 50, 550, 200 plus 20, total of 20, 220. So this is the cost price, this is the selling price. So if I scroll all the way down, now I need to give them a new price. Okay, so what is the new price? You can say copy from total, meaning it's going to copy both of them, or you can add your own price. So if you have 550, let's say we want to round it up to 600. Okay, now let's make this copy from total. We want to make more margin, right? So now we save this. And what happens? We can now add, focus on the asterisk accounts. We've added this. What else? If this is from a vendor, you can put the vendor here. So the dimension, the UPC, all this information related to a product. If you have that, you add track bin location for this item, enable this. Okay, so advanced inventory tracking. If you want to track this by serial number, batch number, you can add select any of this. So let's say inventory assets. The other points should be 10 as usual. Now let us see this. So notice what happened. We've been able to create a composite item which consists of two of our items. Now, if you notice, we really don't have any stock right now. So we can go into this section here, add an opening stock. Okay, so now for this particular code room, we want to add how many? 20. For another stock, we want to add 10. Okay, so we need to add a value for this. So how much? I think we use 220 for all, right? Yeah, 220, copy to all. Yes, 220 because we're only taking our cost price. So you see, we've been able to add this, and this is a composite item. But in Zoho Books, we don't have that. So that's the thing. We'll go back to inventory, like I explained, the assembler inventory and the rest. You see the same thing here. You don't have that. So right, it is in summary, right? So I hope I've been able to touch full base on how you can use this system, right? And also to cover every key thing that you need to know about the Zoho inventory. All right, so thank you for watching.